welcome to you. If you've just tuned in, welcome back if you've been with us on The Full View on SABC News. A focus on Iran and South Africa, now embroiled possibly in a revenge plot against the United States. Let's get straight into that. We'll take you live to Iran shortly, but first live to Washington with Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Now, South Africa's State Security Agency says it's aware of the alleged plot against the US Ambassador to South Africa, Lana Marks, but due to the nature of the threat, it's not permitted to give any further updates on the investigation. The agency was reacting to bombshell news report out of the United States, accusing Iran's government of weighing an assassination attempt against the US envoy to Pretoria, something Tehran has described now as a customed order report from the US government that is biased and a falsification ahead of the US presidential elections this November. For more on the story, we're joined by Sherwin live in the US. Sherwin, what reaction has there been where you are to this bombshell report that we are digesting here in South Africa?
Well, I think you characterize it correctly, Francis, in that there are more questions than answers, given that Politico report. Media outlets here in the United States and around the world reference the Politico report, so there hasn't been additional confirmation through other news outlet sources that can confirm what Politico is reporting. They reference an intelligence report that the journalist that has written the story hasn't seen. It also refers to sources that have seen the report and then passed on that information to the journalist. So certainly more questions than answers. We got a statement earlier, Francis, from the former president of the National Iran-American Council. This is an NGO based out of Washington, D.C., and it says that it represents the largest grouping of Iranians based in the United States. Trita Parsi says that the story is likely a false leak by the Trump White House, potentially aimed at conditioning the American public ahead of what could be an October surprise ahead of the election in November. But he also talks about, assassinating what he refers to as a largely irrelevant ambassador, American ambassador, who only got the job due to her support for Donald Trump in a state, South Africa, that is friendly to Iran, saying that makes little sense to target a U.S. envoy in a country that is favorable to a Tehran policy. I also spoke earlier, Francis, to an Iranian journalist based in the United States, Bahman Kalbasi, who echoed some of the sentiments that I've just expressed in the statement. Let's listen to what he had to say.
It is raising some questions. Why now, and why this particular ambassador in South Africa? We kind of know that they're not done with getting revenge for Qasem Soleimani's assassination, the top general that Donald Trump ordered back in January. But it is the question is, why would they do it in an ally country? South Africa and Iran do have and do enjoy a long-standing relationship. Doing something like that will certainly impact that relationship negatively. And the other question is, it is really not an eye for eye if you went after an ambassador to South Africa who's not known to be very active in Iran policy or known at all inside Iran as a way of getting revenge.
So certainly, Francis, a lot of questions as to why Ambassador Lana Marks in particular would be identified by Iranian authorities. Certainly a lot of questions around that. But also, one must also consider that, this is an administration in the United States under President Donald Trump that suffers from a trust deficit. They've been very economical with the truth as and when it suits them and as and when it can achieve certain aims and ends. So it's very difficult, to be able to say, well, this is, verified reporting from an administration that has been on the record and very truthful in the past. And a lot of questions, certainly, that we have given that Politico report, Francis.
And then, Sherwin, you've also spoken to the Iranian Foreign Ministry that has dismissed these allegations. Just let's look at what what they had to say. They said this was a customed-ordered report by a U.S. media outlet. So saying Iran has no plans and that That was from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also talking about the report as biased and purposeful. So saying this has been cooked up. What else did they say to you?
Yeah, a statement earlier, Francis, from Saeed Khatibzadeh, who is the Foreign Ministry spokesperson out of Tehran. He says that, the remarks that you've just cited, he says that have been purportedly from a U.S. government official in an attempt to make it look real. He says that we advise the American officials to stop resorting to hackneyed and worn-out methods of anti-Iran propaganda in the international arena. He says that as a responsible member of the international community, the Islamic Republic of Iran has proved its constant commitment to the international diplomatic principles and norms. Conversely, it is the United States and the incumbent regime at the White House that has ignored the basic diplomatic principles and has become a rogue regime in the international area. And I think they're specifically referring to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the Quds commander from Iran, in January through a drone strike that was ordered by President Donald Trump and, of course, conducted on the territory of Iraq and not Iran earlier this year, Francis.
All right, so an emphatic denial from Iran. Shifting focus a bit, Sherwin, to COVID-19 with just 50 days. It's incredible to the elections. President Donald Trump hosting an indoor campaign rally in Nevada last night, and we saw the pictures, hundreds of his supporters. And this is against a state directive that limits indoor gatherings to under 50 people. I mean, how is his campaign justifying that?
Yeah, antithetical really to what public health officials are telling us. You know, we heard from the campaign sort of seeking to justify why you would allow hundreds of people into a closed indoor arena that really goes against anything that any epidemiologist or public health experts dealing with this COVID-19 crisis that has really affected the Americans far greater than any other country in the world, just in terms of the number of deaths. We're now moving towards 200,000 deaths in this country, over 6.5 million positive cases. Tim Murtaugh of the Trump campaign, a spokesperson there, Francis, says that if you can join tens of thousands of people protesting in the streets, gamble in a casino, or burn down small businesses in riots, you can gather peacefully under the First Amendment to hear from the President of the United States. What they leave out of that statement is, the asymptomatic spread that happens in a super spreader event like an indoor rally that we saw in Nevada last night. But that aside, this is still an election year. We are 50 days out. Let's listen to what the President had to say. Something about a possible third term, Francis. Here he is.
52 days from now, we're going to win Nevada. And we're going to win 4 more years in the White House. And then after that, we'll negotiate, right? Because we're probably, based on the way we were treated, we're probably entitled to another 4 after that.
And of course, referring there, Francis, to the sort of debunked claims that, the observations by law enforcement authorities running up to the 2016 election of the Trump campaign amounts to treason, and therefore trying to justify in that statement a possible third term. Certainly doesn't sound like the United States, does it?
Yeah, Sherwin, and I wanted to link to more about what Trump was saying, but we're running out of time. So very quickly, the rally in Nevada coming after a very dismal week for the president in terms of fresh revelations about what he knew about COVID-19 and a news report that he disparaged veterans who had lost their lives at war, calling them suckers and losers. He's addressed a new ad from the Biden campaign looking at those alleged comments. What's he saying there?
Well, essentially debunking what credible reporting has revealed in terms of his on-the-record statements with a journalist that has come out with a new book, Bob Woodward. Of course, Bob Woodward, the veteran journalist that wrote a lot of the original content on the Watergate scandal that eventually brought down the president, then Richard Nixon, that was forced to resign in 1974. On-the-record statements that he purposefully downplayed the severity of the pandemic. And then, of course, this Atlantic report, Francis, that spoke about how the president's spoke disparagingly about veterans. The Biden campaign has used his words in terms of calling them suckers and losers, which of course the Trump campaign has denied, in a new ad, and the president really denouncing that and saying that now he can be really vicious. And I would imagine that the rhetoric will continue in a more vicious tone as we get closer to Election Day. Remember, this is a Trump campaign that is lagging in some of the key states that he must win if he wants to get a second term. So all for it, clearly, as we move closer to Election Day.
All right, and opponents of the president clearly hitting a nerve given his response there. Thank you very much for that tonight, and we'll hear lots more from Sherwin Bryce-Pease in the run-up to this very crucial election in the United States.